Like if the earth was breathing, I was feeling like someone was choking the earth and it was struggling to breathe, which is interesting. And I noticed this substance overlapping the earth. It looked like, imagine like refracting mirrors or like some kind of crystals that just like surround the entire earth. And it's like a mesh of some kind. And like it's part of it, but it's not part of it at the same time.
I'm here today with Daniel Berdichevsky. Daniel had a near death experience from heart issues when he was just 19 years old, and he is here to share his experiences with us today. Daniel, thank you so much for being my guest. I'm looking forward to hearing about your experience.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, thank you for having me again. Um, so I'll just start from the beginning again. Um, I was having health problems and I was having really high blood pressure, and this sort of came out of nowhere. For one day I was fine, the next day I started, you know, having breathing problems. I started feeling my heart pound out of my chest. Um, my blood pressure was extremely high, like dangerously high a lot of the times. And I went to a doctor who did all kinds of tests, every kind of test you can think of. And the only thing that they were determined was like slightly elevated thyroid levels, but nothing other than that. They couldn't figure out like what was actually causing the issue at all. So she just put me on blood pressure medication, and it worked for a while, and then it stopped completely. It was not doing anything. It wasn't lowering the blood pressure. So I would come back again, and she would put me on different meds, and I would come back and she would put me on different meds. So we reached a point where she's like, you have to go to a specialist, a heart specialist. And that was going to be the next plan. Was I think I was even going to go to LA or somewhere where I don't live just to see this heart specialist. And but that didn't end up happening. My mom, being religious, took me and my brother. This was a common thing she did throughout our childhood, being Russian Orthodox. She would take us to churches, like Russian Orthodox churches, because each like Orthodox church has like their unique saints and their unique like everything. They're all like their own little world. So she just really admired these churches and monasteries and would take us just for us to be with her. So she's like but she did have the intention of hoping having me healed by going to a monastery. And this monastery was really far. It was on the Oregon border, and I live in San Diego on the Mexican border. So we drove all the way up there, and it was a Greek Orthodox monastery. We stayed there, and on the way there, there was wildfire smoke everywhere. It was really hazy, and it was really bad. Like the smoke was almost unbearable, to be honest. It was crazy why we would even go if it was that bad, but it was. And we ended up there in the monastery, and the smoke wasn't any better in the monastery, and it was making my already bad issues even worse. And I was already dizzy and heart pounding out of my chest, and I was feeling unwell over there in general. And these wildfires were caused by like hundreds of lightning strikes or something. It was a crazy situation. So it was, tell you exactly, 2007, I believe. That's when this was. So I stay in the monastery a few days, and I go. We each have like a little room, like a little dorm that we sleep in, a tiny little room. And so after like a liturgy, after a prayer, I went and I took a rest. In the afternoon, it was probably 12 to 1 p.m. And I just laid down and I did not fall asleep. I did not do anything. I was just laying there, and I like started hearing and feeling my heart really closely. Like it became louder and more intense. And at some point, I actually heard it stop. And when I heard it stop, this sensation of crawling began. Like I was crawling out of a hole. It felt like I was crawling out of a hole. That's the best way I could describe it. Like my body was a hole and I was like trying to climb out of it. And it felt like a struggle. And so I did. And I just like eventually popped out of my body and I ended up on the ceiling, like right on the ceiling. This was a pretty tall ceiling as well. So I'm looking down at my body, and I really didn't know or couldn't recognize that it was me. I it looked so strange and surreal to me that it felt like some kind of, I don't know, it felt like a prop, like some kind of movie prop. It was really bizarre to describe. It didn't look real. And I'm just staring at it and I'm staring at it and like just mesmerized by this thing laying on the bed. And I feel I have a body too. Like I have a sense of arms and legs, but I felt like extremely light. And but other than that, it felt like a body still. And I noticed I could see all around me in all directions. Like I could see behind my eyes clearly. And I remember thinking that was strange. So I end up started looking around some more. I looked through the door and into the monastery, or into one of the churches in the monastery where all the monks were praying. And I like kind of branched out my consciousness like a tree branch, and kind of like fused my mind with everyone's mind in that church. And I was able to feel everything they were feeling. I was able to sense everything they were sensing. And it was really intense, but beautiful too, because at that moment I knew like these monks were sincere and genuinely praying to God and were genuine, real people, not like just religious, dogmatic, deep, power hungry people. Like these were real monks, and I just admired them for that. And it was a really poignant and beautiful moment to be able to feel what they were feeling. And so I kind of shifted back into the ceiling where I was staring at my body again, and then that's when it clicked, and I figured out it was me. Like it just clicked like that. I'm like, whoa, okay, that is me. And that at that very moment, I like just get sucked through the ceiling, like it just like a vacuum cleaner. I don't know. That's kind of what it, like a giant vacuum cleaner pulling me up. And the sensation of being pulled was really intense too. Like I really like the roller coaster description because it's really accurate. Like the first drop of a roller coaster when your stomach is just that intense moment, it was really similar. So I go up and I like shoot up to the sky extremely fast, and I'm above the Pacific Northwest and very high above the earth, like thousands of feet. And I see this region that I'm in and all these little wildfires everywhere, like hundreds of them just ignited and all these little fires. And it looked really kind of pretty, but scary at the same time. And I was really intrigued by that. And I shifted my focus to a city, I believe was San Francisco. I Same ideas with the monks. I projected my consciousness into the city where I felt everyone who was there, or not everybody in the city, but like I just was on some street, and anyone who's walking on that street, I like branched out my consciousness and latched on to everyone else. And it was the same idea as with the monks, except I felt like a lot of sadness from these people and a lot of frustration and worry. It's like that. I remember some of them like being in a hurry or like worrying about work or like worrying about their kids or and like their emotions were pretty intense and it was really like real and raw to feel like all the pain that they were feeling. And I mean, the general mood wasn't really good in that city, but in some way it was also beautiful too. Like it was like it's probably not right to say their suffering was beautiful, but I don't know how else to describe it. If like their suffering had a purpose though, like I felt like it was like for a good reason, I guess. And so I shifted my focus out of that and I'm back to the Pacific Northwest. And that's when I shoot higher into far, far, far above the earth, where I'm already actually seeing the entire earth. And I'm looking at it, and it's a globe. It's somewhat oval, and it's a globe, and it is like alive. It has a consciousness, and it's very, very sentient. Like it's like a super intense, very beautiful living being that I could sense that life coming from, and it has like its own individual identity too, and I could really sense that. It looked like it was breathing. So the earth looked like it was breathing, like it was, but it wasn't like, I mean, it wasn't like literal breaths. It was like this, I guess, like a pulsing sensation, I suppose. But it was like this really vibrant, like living kind of sensation that I got from and it was like a struggling breath though like it was there was something that it wasn't like like it's being constricted like like someone's choking like if the earth was breathing I was feeling like someone was choking the earth and it was struggling to breathe which is interesting and I noticed this substance overlapping the earth it looked like imagine like refracting mirrors or like some kind of crystals that just like surround the entire earth and it's like a mesh of some kind and like it's part of it but it's not part of it at the same time. You wanted to ask me about this but this is like one of the hardest things to describe because I couldn't figure out what it was exactly. It just imagine like some kind of mesh like covering something but it's living and it looked like technology but not technology as we think of. But it also looked alive, but it also didn't look alive, which is just a mess. I know.
It was something that was artificially made, though. It wasn't a natural thing that was surrounding.
That's the thing. I feel like it was both. To me, it felt like it was both artificial and natural. Um, like it was some kind of living artificial system, but it didn't like necessarily look like malevolent either. But and I do think it was part of the reason why this constriction on the earth was happening, but I couldn't, confirm that 100%. Um, but it has something to do with it though, for sure. But I don't think that this thing was necessarily entirely evil. No, not at all. I think it was like a more like a tool, I guess, that could be used like a living tool that could be good used for good or evil, I guess.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm looking at it, and it was a beautiful, intense moment to see the earth in that sort of circumstance. And so I shifted again, and I got shut up in the sky really quickly again. And I see the whole Milky Way galaxy, and it looks very much like a spiral with the central core being full of light, like really similar to a picture of a galaxy. And it was really beautiful too. And I didn't see much other than that. I didn't focus my consciousness onto specific stars or anything like that. So I just uh, shot up, and everything like just disappeared. Like the universe just like kind of like it was like this kind of emotion. It just like kind of closed in on itself, and everything just kind of disappeared and was enveloped by this like white misty substance. Even though I could see all around this entire time, I'm like I am facing like one direction, but I could see all around. And then as I enter this light, I switch. Like my consciousness fully focuses now on the other direction, and I'm looking at all these sparkles, like these little golden circles shooting out from every direction. And there's like just billions of them, it seems. And they're really pretty. They're really, really pretty to look at. And so at that point, once I'm like fully enveloped into the light, I no longer have a body at all. So like it literally just kind of dissipates from me. And now I'm just like this pure form, like the purest form of what I describe as self. Like, yeah, so I became like this blue ball of consciousness, and I'm enveloped in this white light, and there's like this golden like central light inside of this white mist that was, you know, God. And it was like this beautiful moment where I knew at that moment, which I didn't talk about this much as I should have last time, but in that moment I knew that I was like loved forever the way I was, and no matter what happened or what I do at that moment, or like any life ever for all of eternity, like that love is always going to be the same. And it was overwhelming. It was absolutely just like this waterfall of love pouring down. And I felt really at home immediately. I felt like whatever I just experienced on earth was like this insignificant little tiny glitch, like that was completely irrelevant compared to what's really going on in your true home. And I felt really distant from that experience. Like it almost felt like, imagine if you were like a billion years old and you're trying to remember something you did a billion years ago. That's what it felt like. Like that's what it felt like. I was on Earth a billion years ago. Like it was just nothing. Like just I don't know how else to describe it. And in this space, I like to call it the absolute zero point, because I think of it as like where all reality just collapses into zero, and zero is the number that gives life to everything. And in this space, I see all kinds of little blue, yellow, you know, velvet, all like a million different colors of these little balls of consciousness, and they're just floating around freely in this space and interacting with one another. And you know, it was like an adventurous type of sensation being with them. And I'm just in this space, and I noticed one blue light pull up to me specifically, and immediately I recognized who this was. And I can't put a gender on this person or a face on this person. There was no faces. I couldn't see like any distinct features at any point. Like I saw, like I heard like ringing sounds, and I saw different waves and colors, and, but mostly it was just this white mist in space with these blue and multicolored forms of consciousness. And so it approached me, kind of the same idea about the billion years. Like it was like I knew this being for a billion years kind of a thing, or for like all of eternity. It was just such a deep, insanely deep connection. And it's not like a connection you would think of as like a soulmate necessarily, more like a soul brother or a soul sister, like kind of a connection. And and it approached me and it showed me this thing that manifested before me, which looked like a spiral. It was like this undulating, oscillating spiral structure, and it was moving in all directions, like this way and no direction at the same time. And I'm like looking at it and like fascinated by it, and I just see like all these little snippets of faces and things going on in there. And I'm like, I look closer and I like go deep into it, and I'm like, oh, like this is the earth. Like this is literally the structure of the earth, which had no beginning, no middle, no end. Like this this like film, like it was a movie, like it was like a film reel. Like the film reel does have a beginning, middle, and end, but this was like like an eternal spiraling film reel. Like I never had the sense that it ever began. Like it was just always there. And I looked into it and I looked at all these like different points of history, and I'm looking at, like, I have really vivid memories specifically of like the Roman Empire, and remember seeing chariots and colosseums and battles and emperors and all these things in Rome. And it was really fascinating. And that one fascinated me more than other places I was seeing, like, you know, England in the Middle Ages and Europe in the Middle Ages and other points of history and other parts of the planet as well. And I'm like, and then I focus and I see like the leaders, or like people like kings and queens, and I focus on them and people who think they're an authority. And I remember like laughing at them and their authority. Like I'm like, this is like this tiny little movie that they're in, and they think they're so important in it. And I remember like almost actually chuckling, thinking that this is ridiculous that these kings thought that they were so important, because to compare to where I am, like it was just a silly idea. And so I focus on it, and the future was there as well, which was blocked from my memory for some reason until much later. And but yeah, it was a really interesting structure because it was all simultaneous, but it was all simultaneous, but it also had a but at the same time it also had a movement or a structure, like from one moment to another. So it was a sort of like contradiction, which is interesting because it was simultaneous, but it wasn't at the same time. That kind of a thing is possible in heaven, I guess. And so I focus on it, and it shows me the spiral, and it just the blue figure just sort of leaves. It just the spiral collapses, and it just kind of goes on its way. We interact for a little bit. It goes on its way into the void, and I'm in this space a little bit longer. I kind of observe it, like I melt into it a little bit, and I see that it's like there's no depth perception to anything. Like it's as infinitely large as it is small. Like there's no context to where is north or south or east, or you're just like in it completely, but you're not in it at all. So it's like a zero. And so I'm just there, and then the golden light speaks to me, which I wanted to emphasize. did have its own character and did have its own personality and did have its own consciousness like the earth. I did feel like it was a collective of all the souls, yes, but I also felt like it was its own personal identity as well. So it, you know, in this booming voice basically said, I can't stay. And I was extremely upset and actually went from a blue orb back into a body at that very last moments and back into a body. And I was like, literally like on the verge of crying. And it just kind of sent me back and shoved me very fast. And I could see everything in a sequence again, from the galaxy to the Pacific Northwest, and just slammed back into my body. And I came to grasping for breath, being unable to catch my breath. I was really struggling for a few minutes. I got up and looked at the mirror, and I was like the whitest I've ever seen, like I was a ghost, no color at all, and sweating. And it was it was terrible. It was a really terrible sensation to be back and extremely painful. And it's like a sledgehammer, like being hit by a sledgehammer in the chest. And after that, I just sort of snapped out of it and started feeling a little better. And just right then and there, like the same day or the next day, told a monk and my brother and my mom what happened. And then following that, over the next several days or weeks, I had no more heart problems, no more blood pressure problems, nothing at all. Like it never even happened.
And that's continued to this day. You have no other heart problems?
No, no, I don't have any problems.
What do you,
Isn't that interesting?
it
Yeah,
is very interesting. So, do you feel your near-death experience cured you?
yeah, 100%. I do. So I died, but I was reborn in a sense.
Yes.
Hmm.
That's very beautiful. And so this opened up a whole new realm of experiences for you over your lifetime. And you brought some gifts back with you. Tell me about those.
The gifts would be having an insanely clear memory of dreams I have. Not all dreams, just like everyone else. There are some I completely forget, and some I only have jumbled up memories of. But I would say like the majority of dreams that I have hyper clear memories of. Memories of conversations I would have, and in addition to dreams, probably exact numbers I can't tell you, but I've had probably like 40 other out of body experiences since then, some of which were really intense and I entered other dimensions, and others where I couldn't even get out of this room, for example, where I would just like stand right there and like try to open a door and then I would just run back to my body. Some were really stupid and simple like that, and others were really complex.
So the experience, it kind of ripped a hole in the veil for you, and you kind of have access to these other dimensions. And you saw a vision of World War III in one of these experiences. Tell me about that.
Yeah, um, that was, I'll tell you, around, I would say this happened about 2017, 2018, possibly, where it was, so I would call this like a partial out of body experience. And this is a really hard thing to explain to people unless they experience it. Like you have vivid dreams and lucid dreams, and you have partial out of body experiences, and then you have full out of body experiences. So partial would be like half 50% of your consciousness is not in your body. Whereas a dream, like if you have a regular dream, like maybe 10% is, not in the body. And there's like say 50% is out of the body, and you're experience something more than halfway there, but not entirely there. When you're fully out of body, you really know you're out of body. Like you just know. And so this was one of those like partial out of body experience. And I'm a stock trader in the New York Stock Exchange, and I'm like panicking and in a total in a state of shock and disbelief, and everyone around me is in the same state, and we're like surrounded by TVs everywhere. And on the TVs I see like war coverage everywhere. And it was like really like all regions of the world, like the entire planet was just infused in war. And I saw, bomber planes bombing cities, and I saw fighter jets, and I saw Navy ships sinking. I saw like just absolute chaos and destruction. I remember like a whole entire fleet of fighter jets, like probably hundreds of them flying over and destroying some city. And it was like really, it was really intense and not pleasant at all. And so I shifted my perspective from this stock trader, and I kind of zoom out in the space, kind of similar to my near-death experience. And I'm above the northeast USA, and I just see this like wall of water. It just looked like this tidal surge, like it just kind of completely destroys the northeast, like goes 100 miles inland, and that entire region is just completely wiped out. And one thing that's interesting to know is something like that seems impossible or ridiculous, but actually it's not. There is a weapon that can do that. It's called a Poseidon nuclear torpedo, and Russia has it. It can create a 500-foot tall radioactive tsunami that completely destroys entire regions. And it's like 100 or 200 megatons. And so I don't know that that's what it was, though. I mean, I assume, but I have no idea. I didn't see it. I didn't see specifically that that's what it was, but I just saw that the wave destroyed the entire Northeast.
Do you think that was a prophetic vision?
My personal opinion, yeah, I think the likelihood is pretty high of it happening at some point. Um, Considering where we are now, um, I don't know. I don't like the word prophetic because I want to think of myself as a prophet at all. So I don't want to use that word. Yeah.
Do you think it's something that we can change?
Yeah. Or, I mean, that we can, but, we have a lot of really sociopathic, psychopathic people in power around the world. So it's a problem for the whole human race with people like that in power, which is funny because, right, I saw people in power in my near death experience. And from that perspective, they were nothing. Down here, they are something. They do have power over a lot of things, and they do influence our lives. So from our perspective, it's important.
And you have had visions before that have come true. Tell me about that.
I had a dream with my grandpa before the Ukraine war. Um, and speaking of dead loved ones, I've never seen them in out of body experiences, but I've seen them in dreams a few times. And I was like going for a walk in the woods with my grandpa, who grew up in a village in Russia, and he spent all 5 years in World War II and wrote a book about his experience that was personally signed by Putin, which is a strange irony in all of this. He died in 2019, and he was a really like respected person and received a medal from the Russian government, all kinds of medals, war hero and everything. And we were just going for a walk, and he was telling me like that major war is coming. It's going to be heard all around the world, and it's going to affect everyone. And this was like probably like 2021, and the war started in 2022. So like maybe a year prior. Yeah, that was one of the very few times I saw my grandpa in a dream. Like, like maybe a couple of times only.
It was
Yeah,
like it was important for him to tell you about this.
tell me.
Yeah.
It was important because I had family. I have family in Russia and Ukraine who left after the war, and some of them came right here where I am now. So it was definitely important. Yeah,
You had a recent out of body experience that you wanted to share with us as well.
yeah. This actually happened right before the April 8th eclipse, and it was, I believe, directly related to the eclipse because I saw something that looked like an eclipse right here in this room. Um, well, this experience is important because it really questions what I think of as life forms and what I think of as life. So, remember, well, that was the prior video, but I could get into that one too. But this one, I just jump out of my body, and this was also, it happens a lot. Like if I take, or like early in the morning, or if I take a daytime nap, like overnight, it doesn't happen that often. So this was already in the morning, and I go out of my body, and I'm floating around this room right here, and I see this burning wreath right next to this mirror, which you can't see, the mirror is behind here. I see a burning wreath on fire and with a hole in it, so it looks like a ring of fire eclipse. So this was like April 6th, April 5th, maybe, that this happened. And the eclipse was April 8th. And I touch it, and I could see my hand go through it. So I could see that this ring of fire was a portal. And I see like stars on the other side of it. So I am really curious, and this is all like hyper, super, super real. And I just like put my hand in it, and I just go through it entirely. And I'm like just in a sea of stars now. I'm in some kind of nebula, in some kind of galaxy that felt extremely far away. And I just shift my consciousness. I see a planet, and I go down, and I'm in this strange room, this like very boxy black looking building. I'm inside of it, and it was extremely quiet. Like it kind of looked like a sound room, like everything was deafeningly quiet. But there was like hieroglyphic looking letters all over the walls, this like alien language. And I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to decipher it. And I'm really curious about these strange symbols everywhere. And I go into another room, and I see these like red clay bricks everywhere. And they're just like symmetrical square boxes that look like red clay. And they're just stacked on top of each other. And they're just covering this entire room. And I'm like looking at this red clay, and I'm like, what is this? And then it starts communicating with me. So it was alive. So this red clay stuff was alive. It was sentient. And so as I started communicating with it, it starts shapeshifting and morphing into a different form. So the clay would turn into other forms. It was a little bit scary to look at, actually. And so I kind of freaked out a little bit as it was shapeshifting in front of me. And I just kind of float around the room a little bit more and just shoot back here and just zoom back through the portal into my body right here. Like, what was that? I was like, that was very intense. And that was like I know like we should be open minded about like what we think of as life and on other planets, but that was so different to me that I couldn't come up with that even if I tried.
So it was like
Like sentient clay blocks. Yeah.
yeah, it was like the clay was alive.
Yeah. No, it was like, no, it was alive. It was definitely living, like living beings of some kind. Yeah.
Wow. And then what was the other one that we talked about in the first podcast?
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the white-eyed people. Um, that one, I ended up out of body and inside of a closet, which was strange. And I don't know if that has ever happened before. I go out of body and I like in a closet and someone opens the door and I'm in a house. And I remember this person who I couldn't see their face or couldn't see, well, remember, I couldn't see my own face either, but there was a person there and there was a dog there as well. It was like a German Shepherd looking dog. And I followed them to this room in the house and I see this group of people who had completely pale skin and completely white eyes with no iris, no pupils, no nothing. They were completely white, and their eyes look like stucco a little bit. Like there was like a little bit white bumpy substance on their eyes, and I'm looking at them, and they weren't freaky at all though. Like I wasn't scared. Like if someone would see that here, they would probably freak out and run away. But they were completely normal looking to me, and I wasn't scared of them. And so they were just kind of sitting in this circle, and I noticed this. The lights were all red, so it was like a regular looking house, like a suburban American home, like standard, and it had red lights. So we have yellow lights in our house, and everything inside was red. And red eyes, red lights and white eyes. I don't know why or how, but that's how they evolved, I suppose. And so they're sitting in a circle around what I think of as me, or I know that that was another avatar of me or another life that I was living in that moment. And they were sitting in a circle and they were, I guess, kind of like in a meditative prayer because in that state they knew I was in distress or I was in trouble. And so they're trying to heal me. And so I observed myself and I was really in a bad state in that body. And the person who took me out of the closet like let me look at it for a little while. Then they wouldn't let me anymore, and I went outside for a bit. And just like the red lights in the rooms, the sun was red. So there was a red sun, red lights, and white eyes, and it just sort of pulled me back. And then the dogs started barking and being aggressive at me too, and they just all kind of try to shove me back into the closet. And they did, and I was shoved back into the closet and then just went through like a dark tunnel and slammed back into my body again.
Do you think their prayers kind of called you to that location?
Yeah, no, I do. I think that like I had this sense that that race of humans, I'll still say they're humans despite their differences. I do feel like they're more evolved than us here, and they were more spiritually connected. And I feel like actually negative stuff in this life was causing negative stuff in that life. So that's how my soul got pulled into that life because I think those two lives are trying to rebalance each other, perhaps.
Oh, that's so interesting. Have you noticed a change in the events in your life since then? Here?
Yeah, I mean things are constantly changing. It's overwhelming sometimes actually. It seems like every year it like just gets faster and faster and it's like the learning just keeps getting more condensed and condensed. I mean, at least in my experience, uh, every year is more intense than the one before it in some way. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I hope that Avatar healed though, whatever problem it was having, which is still me, right? It's still us. Like I said in the prior video, all our lives are connected. They're all like in a chain, like it's an infinite chain. And anything you do in another life, whether it's a past life here or another dimension, has a direct correlation to what's going on here in this life. It kind of felt like a drum circle in a way, like the way it was laid out, and I was laying down in the middle. It had this like ritualistic feeling to it, but not like in a negative way. And I feel like they called that version of me to go deep into its soul so it could try to extract information from other lives perhaps and bring it back to that environment to see what's going on. Mhm.
Like it was a
Right.
connection, like to connect you.
Connect me to, yeah, other lives, other realities. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? Wow. If my viewers wanted to reach out to you, is there a way that they can find you?
Yeah, you can check out my channel where I share my dreams. It's called Dreams and the Cosmic Truth, where I share, and I talk about all kinds of things, including the Mandela effect, and conspiracies, and but I do share my dreams and out of bodies as well, out of body experiences as well.
And if you had one message that you would like to leave with the audience today, what would it be?
Well, like I said last time, everyone is unique, and because everyone is unique, you should, love yourself. Loving yourself is a hard thing to do sometimes, but you know, you're all eternal and immortal and unique, a unique aspect of God, and it's important that everyone love themselves.
That is very important and a beautiful closing statement. Thank you so much, Daniel. This has been
Thank you.
beautiful. I know we had to do this a second time, but I think it's well worth it because your story is so important. It's so beautiful and profound, and there's so many beautiful messages in it for my viewers. I know everyone's going to love it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and thank you. I'm glad we did this again.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people, and that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.